Breaking news out of the NFL. Pete Caroll will be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. That's per multiple reports. Carroll spent 14 seasons as a head coach in Seattle before parting with the Seahawks after the 2023 season. His career highlights include a college football national championship at USC and a Super Bowl title with the Seahawks in the 2013 season. He, of course, replaces Antonio Pierce with the Raiders, who have made only one playoff appearance in the past 8 seasons. This news is now confirmed by our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, as you take a look at that coaching carousel around the NFL, and just 3 spots still open: Jags, Saints, and Cowboys, and maybe just really 2 because the Jags are working to finalize a deal to hire Liam Cohen as their next head coach. But for right now, it's time to talk to Raiders, who are bringing in Pete Caroll as their head coach. The man who confirmed that news, Jonathan Jones, now tapping in with us. And JJ, how did this deal come together so where we can sit here and say the 73-year-old Pete Caroll will be the next head coach of the Raiders?
So let's go back to the weekend, Zach, where the Raiders were ready to make a strong push for Ben Johnson, the Lions' offensive coordinator at the time. And then on Monday, it became very clear to the Las Vegas Raiders, to Tom Brady and Mark Davis, that they weren't going to be able to land Ben Johnson, that he was going to the Chicago Bears. And so then they had to hit reset and see where they were. And ever since then, Pete Caroll has been the leader for the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously a culture and change agent, someone who, as you noted earlier, had such great success in Seattle with the 2 Super Bowl trips, the 1 Super Bowl victory, not having a losing season for about 10 years or so straight. And so that is how this came to be. 73 years young, Pete Caroll is now the oldest head coach in the NFL. I guess once again, he was previously the oldest head coach in the NFL 2 years ago, took the year off, and now again. But obviously a resume that very few can match, this now being, of course, his fourth NFL team that he has been a head coach of. Very, very rare. Marty Schottenheimer certainly up there. So a lot of records that Pete Caroll is certainly tying and potentially breaking, becoming now the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, and maybe feeling extra rejuvenated after having that year away from being a head coach in the NFL. When you look at the way the Raiders are constructed and knowing that Tom Brady being a part of the ownership team there, how much of a role did he play in this decision?
Yeah, it was a massive role. Tom Brady has been leading this search for the Las Vegas Raiders. He's been a part of almost every interview that they have done, a very instrumental part. I've been told that he's led these interviews for most of the 2.5, 3 hours that candidates met, both at general manager and at head coach. But of course, while he is a minority owner, while he does have a great deal of football say, Mark Davis is still the day-to-day operator. Now, I'm told in some of these meetings and interviews that Mark Davis has said to candidates, look, I've done things one way, it hasn't worked out, so I'm letting Tom Brady lead this. And there have been 3 other limited partners who have been involved in these interviews, guys who recently bought into the Las Vegas Raiders from their hedge fund billions and private equity billions. And so they have all, the 5 of them, worked together to land on Pete Caroll, who, up until this week, he was planning to teach a business course at the University of Southern California. And so now he goes with Vegas. He did have a call with Jerry Jones. Folks I talked to thought that maybe that was his effort to drum up just a little bit of leverage when it became clear that he was going to likely become the Las Vegas Raiders head coach, as we've been telling you for the last couple of days. That did not turn into any sort of formal interview, just a chat. And so now Pete Caroll, as they hammer out the details, will become the next head coach of the Raiders.
Yeah, so you look over there at Vegas, and you've got a new GM. You now have a new head coach, and some obvious spots on the roster that need help because of what your record just was. What is next for the Raiders this offseason?
So you know that they just brought in John Spytek as general manager. He goes back with Tom Brady more than a quarter century, going back to their Michigan days. Now he's going to work with Pete Caroll, who had worked with John Snyder there in Seattle. I'll be very interested to see what the setup here is. Is this going to be the classic general manager head coach setup? Is it going to be more head coach driven, like what we saw in Seattle with Pete Caroll. That will be fascinating to see, and that, of course, will help determine the direction of the franchise. We see right there that the Raiders are choosing 6th in the draft. We'll see if they could potentially move up. We see some quarterback-needy teams that are above them. Certainly, in the first 3 picks, we believe that there are only 2 quarterbacks who are worth taking anywhere close to the top 6 of the draft. So can the Raiders ultimately move up? There was a time, Zach, where after every Raiders loss, Shedeur Sanders was tweeting out, "Thank you, God." And most people took that as an indication that Shedeur Sanders wanted to be drafted by the Raiders. With every loss, they seemed to move up the draft board and had a better shot at getting Deion Sanders' son, the Colorado quarterback. So we will see ultimately if the Raiders are going to be able to do that. A little bit of money to spend in free agency, but really they are going to have to start picking better in the draft. They've had a lot of misses over a few regimes now, and so they're going to have to draft and develop. And of course, they'll probably make some splashes in free agency, but they have to get the quarterback. But at least, Zach, they have the head coach. They know it's going to be Pete Caroll, and man, hard to find guys who are more successful than him. And I think in conclusion here, they needed Pete Caroll. Look at this division of the AFC West, where at quarterback you have Patrick Mahomes and you have Justin Herbert and Bo Nix, but at coach, you have future first ballot Hall of Famer Andy Reid. You have potential Hall of Famers in Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton. So you had to get a heavy hitter, and certainly they did that with Pete Caroll.
Yeah, certainly you could say you got to keep up with the Joneses as we keep up with our very own Jones. And JJ, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it as Pete Caroll gets ready to stay west, but just head a little bit east over to Las Vegas. And now that makes it 4 hirings that are now complete on that coaching carousel, with 3 more to be monitored and 3 more still to be filled. The Jags, Saints, and Cowboys. And keep it tapped here on HQ because we are not done talking about the Raiders and Pete Caroll heading over to Las Vegas. On the other side, we'll have Leger Douzable join us to make sense of this hiring from his perspective.
We got breaking news from the NFL where Pete Caroll will be the next head coach in Sin City of the Las Vegas Raiders. That's been confirmed by Jonathan Jones this morning with that news. Caroll spent the past 14 seasons as the head coach there in Seattle before parting ways with the Seahawks after that 2023 season. His career highlights include a college football national championship at USC and a Super Bowl title back in the day, not too long ago, 2013 with the Seahawks. They'll replace Antonio Pierce with the Raiders, who have only 1 playoff appearance in the past 8 seasons. Ouch. But it's going to get better because now you get Pete Caroll, who is one of those winningest coaches when you're talking about guys around the league, and now plug them in there with the Raiders. You look at the carousel. We only have 3 openings remaining there. We started with 8. We are down to 3, or I should say 7, I should say there. Vrabel, of course, getting the first go. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and now Pete Caroll, the latest domino to fall in the NFL. For more on this, I want to bring in our Leger Douzable. And Leger, this is news that you and I didn't expect today for multiple reasons. But your thoughts on this, on how this all went down in Sin City?
I really love this hire by the Las Vegas Raiders. And I know JJ was just talking about it, and I'm going to reiterate that point, because when you're in the AFC West, you better have somebody that has had some success coaching in the NFL or college, because when you look at the realm of the AFC West, Jim Harbaugh won a national championship. Andy Reid won multiple championships. Sean Payton won a championship in the NFL and took his team to the playoffs this year as a rookie quarterback. So when you look at that job, I know a lot of people link potentially Ben Johnson going there, Liam Cohen, and I always thought a veteran head coach needed to go there because of the gauntlet of the other coaches that are there, right? They have a ton of experience. And then when you look at this team, Brandon, it kind of reminds me of the year that they shipped Russell Wilson off from Seattle to Denver, that 2022 year. Let's not forget at the quarterback position, they had Geno Smith and Drew Lock, and nobody knew who was going to be the starting quarterback. Well, that's a similar scenario that the Las Vegas Raiders are in right now with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew and potentially a draft pick in the future. So you needed a veteran guy that's done it at an elite level, not only in college, but in the NFL. And also, when you look at him, and you put him up against some of those other gauntlet coaches in the AFC West, you better have a guy at the helm that can get it done, and Pete Caroll can get it done.
By the way, he is 73, a year older than Bill Belichick, and when that happened, when he said bye-bye to the league, we thought, okay, it's a young man's game with a lot of these young OCs or DCs getting the job. What are you hearing about maybe the conversation, the perception of Carroll with the age gap there? Is it big? Is it small? Your thoughts on that?
I don't think this is an issue because if you talk to anybody that's played for Pete Caroll, you would never know he's 73. I mean, more energy than anybody on the sideline. And Brandon, I would say the over-under on 10 pieces of bubble gum being chewed on the sideline for Pete Caroll. This is a guy who just bleeds infectious energy, right? I've talked to people that play for him in Seattle, like teammates that I've played with, and they say, bro, you would never even know this guy's in his 70s because he's out there with us doing the warm-up. He's out there playing catch with us, doing the pregame. He's out there being a defensive back sometimes because he obviously has a defensive background as well. He has a ton of energy, and I know that's always a concern, right? Is he going to be relatable being in his 70s? But Pete Caroll, he's a player's coach. He has great energy, and you would never know he's 70-something. So I don't think that will be an issue. I know it's an issue for a lot of teams bringing in older coaches, but you won't have that issue with Pete Caroll.
You already mentioned, of course, the difficulty with that division, everybody trending up. Even we saw what happened with the Broncos this year. Now you add John Spytek, the new GM that they got there from Tampa Bay, and now Pete Caroll. We know they need a quarterback, but what are some of the other pieces to contend, not just in that division, but the AFC as a whole?
Yeah, they need more explosive playmakers on the outside. I know JJ was saying that they had struggled in drafts. I honestly thought this last year's draft was one of the best they've had in years, right? Jackson Powers-Johnson was a home run draft pick. Even Glaze started a few games for them at right tackle, and he played really well. And then Brock Bowers was a not missed draft pick, right? He set the rookie record for receptions at tight end position. So they actually have some pieces there. They need to get more explosive on offense. Wideout is a position they really need to hone in. And JJ alluded to them having quite a bit of money to spend this offseason. They also have, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the number 5th or 6th overall pick. So how aggressive do they get to get a quarterback? Because in this league, Brandon, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. We talked about the head coaches in the AFC West. Talk about the quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, the mini-GOAT. Justin Herbert took his team to the playoffs. Bo Nix took his team to the playoffs. So until you have that signal caller under center, it's going to be a struggle. So it'll be up to Mr. Spytek and also Pete Caroll to get that position right. Because you can get every other position right on that team. But unless you have the quarterback, you have no chance of winning games.
But let me ask you that, because like you said, they do have the 6th overall pick there. I mean, it is Vegas. Should they trade up and go get maybe a Cam or go get a Shador? You need a quarterback. Is that the first move? It is Sin City, Leger.
And that'll be the question, right? Where do they evaluate those guys? Do they think they're worthy of a top 2 or 3 pick? If you're going to give away that much draft capital to trade up, I would assume if they're trying to get into one of those top 2 spots, you're talking about multiple first-round picks, multiple second-round picks. So that's the question that, you know, Spytek and Pete Caroll and even Tom Brady, who I know will have his hand in this, they have to ask themselves when evaluating a Cam Ward and Shador Sanders, is it worth trading away future pieces of the franchise, essentially, to go up and get our guy if we truly believe he's that guy? But I'll tell you this again, Brandon, if you don't have a guy under center that can get it done, more specifically in that division, you're going to be hard-pressed to find wins in the AFC West.
Yeah, for a very long time, because Patrick Mahomes is not going anywhere in that AFC West there. Leger Douzable with that breaking news there. Of course, Pete Caroll, I should say, going out to Vegas. Take a look at the openings there. When you look at the carousel there, I got a little excited. It's Sin City. Why not? Jags, Saints, and Cowboys still question marks when it comes to their head coaches. Jacksonville maybe getting closer there with Liam Cohen. That has been the rumbling. The Saints, they've been the odd man out. Not much going on there. The Cowboys, Schottenheimer has been rumored there, had a second interview there. But when it comes to HCs, we only got 3 remaining out there in the NFL.